What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So the Indiana Pacers scored 162 points last night against the lowly Washington Wizards. I think the final score was 162 to 109. 162 to 109. As a matter of fact, the Pacers, I think the last 3 or 4 possessions, purposely committed 24-second violations because they were feeling actually embarrassed by how badly they were beating the Wizards. What is it, a 53-point shellacking? I think at its worst it was 59. Had the Pacers continued their deluge, they may have actually flirted with, if not broken, the NBA record for most threes in the game. I think it's 29 by the Milwaukee Bucks. The Pacers connected on 27. I believe there were 27 of 47 from downtown. They shot 64% from the floor. 64% from the floor. They had 9 players in double figures. And the hits just keep on coming for the Washington Wizards. Let me ask you a question. I remember last year and the year before that, when the Wizards were 35 and 47, people were calling for Unseld. JB Bickerstaff. People were calling for JB Bickerstaff. No, not JB Bickerstaff. I'm getting my coaches mixed up. They were calling for Wes Unseld Jr. to get fired. That was right the first time. Now, he was 35 and 47 the year before, right? 2023-24. 2022-23. Wes Unseld Jr. was 35 and 47. Started off the 2023-24 season 7 and 36, and people were screaming for him to get fired, right? And rightfully so. And he got fired. But yet, you notice nobody's calling for Brian Keefe to lose his job. And I can't help but keep mentioning these things because I see a pattern. Brian Keefe, in 1 calendar year now, as the Wizards head coach, is 24 and 88. He's almost collected 90 losses in 1 calendar year. And nobody's calling for him to lose his job. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But you got people saying Doc Rivers needs to lose his job. I'm just saying you have people screaming at the top of their lungs that Adrian Griffin should get fired from the Bucks, despite having a 30 and 13 record. But nobody's screaming for Brian Keefe to lose his job. Man, I wish my boy LB was still here, man, because he would point this crap out. He would be furious at the effort of the Washington Wizards. By the way, the Pacers, who just set their franchise record for most points, 162, had just previously set their franchise record of 157 last season. So this is indicative of a trend that we have going on where not only are just individual players having, ridiculous scoring burst because there's no defense. There's really no defensive resistance. The game has devolved into a 3-point contest. And all those games when those shots are falling, which can be, addictive. If there's really no defense being played, guys can get in rhythm. These guys are tremendous shooters. And while it's fun to have a game like that every now and then, I mean, a steady diet of it is a bad thing. I don't want to see a billion games where teams are scoring 150, 160 points a night. You just don't want to see that, man. But yet, look, you got idiots. I saw this trending on Twitter /X. You still got idiots screaming that Wilt Chamberlain never really scored 100 points. And you know what's really pissing me off about this shit? If I were to sit here and say, you know, I don't think LeBron James attended Kobe's memorial, which he did. And Stephen A's fucked up saying that, right? But if I were to say that on X, on YouTube, you would have all these notes under the videos, under the caption, fact check shows that LeBron did indeed intend, blah, blah. They have all these fact checks, but they'll allow this lie that Wilt didn't score 100 points to be promoted all over social media for hits, likes, and clicks. They don't give a fuck about the history. That's the bullshit I'm talking about. But then they'll say, I know I'm ranting, kind of going all over the place a little bit with this video, but they'll sit there and say that, well, it's not really impressive if Wilt did score 100 points because there really weren't any great centers other than Bill Russell, which isn't exactly true. Because in the early to mid 1960s, you still had, you know, other really good centers. Walt Bellamy, who is a Hall of Famer, was in the NBA. You had Johnny Red Kerr, who's a good center. You know, you had Darrell Imhoff, who was a pretty decent center. But you also got to remember that at that time, you only had 8 to 10 teams. So if you got 2 Hall of Fame centers in a league with 8 teams, that's still a pretty decent ratio compared to today, because I ask you, how many Hall of Fame centers are there in the NBA right now other than Jokic? Joel Embiid didn't play this year. Not really. Other than Joel Embiid, who else is there? Anthony Davis really isn't a center. Who else is there? Do we even have any real basic centers? But nobody uses that. Nobody uses that to discount Jokic. By the way, Jokic couldn't even jump over a phone booth. Wilt Chamberlain is one of the great athletes in the history of this sport, but yet y'all have a hard time believing that he could put up big numbers. Make that make sense. Make that make any motherfucking sense, because it doesn't. By the way, the Pacers, 162 points, are the most that any team has scored in a non-overtime game in 18 years. 18 years, I believe it was. I think it's 17 or 18 years. I think it's 2007 or 2008. Now, it was a game you might recall a couple of years ago. I think it was the Clippers versus the Kings. I think the Kings won in, it might have been like 3 or 4 overtimes. 177, 175. I think that's the second highest scoring game in the history of the NBA. But in a not overtime game, the Pacers scored 162 points. Had they really tried to go for the gusto, they probably could have scored 168, 170 points last night. Just ridiculous, man. All these stats are super inflated. That's why I say, you know, it's very impressive that a guy like Allen Houston was putting up 23 points a night back in 2003 when the league was only averaging like 95 points a game. I only can imagine what a healthy Allen Houston, with his shooting ability, with his scoring ability, you know, and as Houston, before he really started developing knee issues, he could at times take it to the basket. But with the lack of a big man now patrolling the paint, I wonder, number one, the lack of physicality, would he have lasted longer? And I wonder what type of numbers he would have put up today. I could definitely see him putting up 27, 28 if he was putting up 23 points back then before he got hurt. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.